Hello, Facebook friends. Also, my Podomatic Podcast listeners and Facebook friends. This is Mark Mai here. We are doing companion video for episode number 70. Really good episode. I'm really excited about this one. It's got a particular record in there that I know is a grail for a lot of record collectors. So I'm really happy to have a copy. It's not an original copy. It's a reissue copy that came out in around the 80s. But that's okay. The music is still the same music, so that's what makes it appealing to me anyway. So we're going to start off right away. We started with, let me just make sure I've got the order correct here. Yeah. So we start off with a record. Opening song is going to be called Blues Almighty. And it is from a record that stars alto saxophonist Johnny Hodges, along with organist Wild Bill Davis. They did several albums together, 5, 6. I'm not exactly sure the number, but several albums together, and it's a great pairing. The organ and the alto saxophone is can't miss. So the actual album is on Verve and is called Blue Rabbit. Johnny Hodges actually has the nickname Rabbit. There's quite a few different renditions of how he's gotten the nickname. The one that I believe most is when he plays, he sort of makes a funny face when he plays his alto saxophone, and his front teeth show as he's biting down on the mouthpiece of the saxophone. In the episode, I mentioned that someone gave him the nickname because of the way he used to eat a sandwich, tomato and lettuce sandwich, looked like he was a rabbit. We'll never really know. The only people who know are the person who gave him that nickname and him. But there's a couple good theories. But it's a great album. I was real happy when I got this one. I actually went. A friend of mine knows that I collect records. They emailed me a yeah. Well, it was an advertisement for a gentleman who was having a sale, selling off. It said in the ad, selling off some of my collection. Okay, so I go, and it turns out that it's sort of true, but not really true. He's a collector, and what he actually does is he buys stuff for his collections, the stuff that he doesn't really want, or might be duplicates or whatever. He sells out of his basement. He has like a little storefront in his basement, really. And the basement is huge basement, and it's divided up into rooms. He put up drywall and created different rooms. And he has a room that's all his vinyl collection, and he's got another room that's all 45s, and he's got another room that he has tapes and CDs in, much smaller than the vinyl collection. I'd say he's got probably about 17,000 records down in his basement. Then there's another room that's where he sells records. And he sells the records to support his record collecting. Kind of a smart guy in doing that. Most people dip into their own budget, but this one was there. It was only $7.99, which is unbelievable because it's in such great shape. Look how nice and neat and clean. It looks almost brand spanking new. So for $7.99, it was a steal. And so I got that. Then here we go and we get into the meat of the show. I used several tracks off of this particular album. This is the one that I was referring to when I said, I basically built the show around this. This is a holy grail for a lot of people. This also I purchased from that gentleman as well. This is digital remastered direct from the original analog tapes. This is on Columbia Jazz Masters label. This is the memorable 1957 telecast featuring Billie Holiday, Lester Young, Count Basie, and Roy Eldridge, and others. This is The Sound of Jazz. And this particular copy unfortunately doesn't have the original cellophane on it anymore. I am going to get a plastic sleeve and put it in there to protect it. But I mean, I think whoever bought it played it once or twice, and I've played it now I think 3 or 4 times. But it still looks, in great shape, brand new, almost new. I would say this is definitely in near mint condition that people are looking for. But this particular was a telecast on CBS, and it had brought together quite a few wonderful artists to perform on the soundstage of CBS there. I think it was Studio 57, if I'm not mistaken. But Wild Man Blues by Henry Red Allen, Rosetta, Henry Red Allen again, Fine and Mellow by Billie Holiday, that's the amazing one, Blues by Jimmy Guthrie and Pee Wee Russell, I Left My Baby, which features the Count Basie All-Stars with Jimmy Rushing doing vocals, The Train in the River, which is Jimmy Guthrie trio. Then we have a tune called Nervous it's a solo piano with Mal Waldron. And then we end up the record with Dickie's Dream, which features the Count Basie All-Stars. Now, this recording is actually a rehearsal just a couple of days previous to the television show. Okay? So, a short while after, when there was such a huge craze for the television show, the actual soundtrack for the television show came out and was called The Real Sound of Jazz. But still, this is still wonderful. And actually check out my Facebook page, because I did go on YouTube and find a copy of the telecast, the CBS telecast, I should say, and I have that on my Facebook page, so you can actually see the actual telecast. There was a couple of different versions. Someone edited, because here on the record we have Mal Waldron. The day of the actual telecast, Mal Waldron didn't do that song. They had Thelonious Monk was there. There was actually quite a bit going on at that time. Thelonious Monk, it was on the actual telecast. Okay. Also taped at the same time in a different studio was Miles Davis with Gil Evans orchestra doing So What, and there was also in another studio, in that same studio but in a different off to the side, Ahmad Jamal played. So at the same time, all these musicians were performing and playing, and it was all being recorded, and it was telecast at different times, but there's a video you can actually purchase I had it at one time on VHS, where they put it all together. Miles Davis, Ahmad Jamal, Thelonious Monk, the whole thing was there, all there. So, because they were actually doing a series called The Seven Lively Arts, and so they recorded a bunch of stuff, and they split it up into a couple of different shows, though. So, one sad note, on the record is a bass player by the name of Walter Page. Unfortunately, the day of the telecast, Walter was so sick he was not able to get out of bed, and unfortunately, on December 20th, 1957, Walter Page did pass away. So, a little something, a little extra tidbit there of information. He's on the record, he's not on the telecast, and shortly afterwards he died. Alright, moving on. I'm actually going to have a sip of my drink here. I'm having Mac Jack Blood Orange Ginger Hard Cider. It's very good. Hard cider with infused with blood orange and ginger. Delicious. Alright. Moving on, we had a gentleman by the name of Kenny Ball and his Jazzmen. This is he's famous for Midnight in Moscow. Midnight in Moscow. But anyways, this is a particular record on Cap label. It's called It's Trad. Great stuff. Unfortunately, someone went crazy with a black marker and did a little scribble here and wrote 50 cents over here. I found over the years that if I get a magic eraser, I can probably get rid of that. Just use it real lightly. There is a bit of a lamination here on the cover, so if I press very lightly, I will take off that magic marker, but not ruin the. And it'll actually clean up a lot nicer. Hit the back where with the finger from touching it and everything, they'll all come off. But these are Kenny Ball is a very good traditional jazz player. He's originally from England or Great Britain, and he plays trumpet in very, very good style. So I put a piece off of this. I think I won't be able to remember which one it was. Saturday Night Function, Duke Ellington tune. Here are the personnel: Ron Weatherburn piano, Vic Pitt bass, John Bennett trombone, Patty Lightfoot banjo, Ron Bowden drums, and Dave Jones clarinet. So, alright, moving on. It's a great tenor saxophone player. Always glad when I find anything by him, because he's one of the I think one of the greats. I do try to collect. He was one of the artists who featured prevalently on Pablo Records, and I'm always trying to find him on Pablo. This one here is actually on Inner City Records, and it's called "Swingin' Till the Girls Come Home." This is Eddy Lockjaw Davis Quintet, and quartet. Sorry. Just looking at the back here, piano, Thomas Clausen, Bo Stife on bass, and Alex Riel on drums. This was actually recorded for Steeplechase Records, and this was originally when he was in Europe. I think he was in Copenhagen, living in Copenhagen at the time. So this is recorded across the pond, as they say, but released here in the U.S. Alright, moving on. this one here, and I'm actually going to open this up so you can see this. It's a beautiful, I love Fantasy Records, the Fantasy record label, because they have a whole series of records that look like this. Beautiful red vinyl. They had red vinyl, yellow vinyl, blue vinyl. So this was a real fine gem. I'm glad I was able to get a hold of this. This is called Reunion, and this is Dave Brubeck, Paul Desmond, and David Van Crete. So I guess at one point they were Dave Brubeck Octet, and that broke up, and of course the Dave Brubeck Quartet, which we all are familiar with, became prevalent. And so this was recorded after several of the Dave Brubeck Quartet recordings, and the tenor man here, David Van Crete, rejoined them for this particular album, and hence the name Reunion. It's very good, but it's what they call third stream jazz, which is a combination of jazz and classical together. So it's not exactly everybody's taste, because it does have those classical tinges to them. I find it rather enjoyable. It's definitely a departure from what you're used to with the Dave Brubeck Quartet. So that makes it nice too, because it's a little something different. But it was good, and I think we actually played a tune called Divertimento, and it's basically based on an Italian musical feeling. It's sort of an operatic almost feeling to it. It's very cool. Alright, moving on. We have a vocal that we used. And again, we used several tracks off of The Sound of Jazz. We used a vocal by Billie Holiday, and we used a vocal by Mr. 5x5 himself. So we thought we'd put in another vocal here by Lena Horne. I love Lena Horne. I think she's very, not only a beautiful voice and a beautiful woman, but she's quite the personality too. And but this is actually called The Incomparable Lena Horne. And this features Phil Moore and his orchestra. And this is on gold. Let me see. Yeah, it just says high fidelity. Isn't that interesting? But at the top here it says golden tone, high fidelity, and then here it just says high fidelity, and on the back high fidelity. So that's kind of an odd name for the label, but anyways, a lot of good tunes here on this one, and some really famous ones. It's a Rainy Day, Frankie and Johnny, Little Girl Blue, Blue Prelude, More Than You Know, At Long Last Love, which is the tune that we used. Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, and Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. So a lot of good tunes on that one. Moving on, we hit up with a trumpet player. Again, doing a little bit of a sort of a more traditional style. Although by the time he was doing this particular record for Capitol Records, this is on, his style was more of a meaning more towards mainstream and away from the traditional or Dixieland that he started with. But this is the Jonah Jones Quartet, and it's called Swingin' at the Cinema, hit songs from top Hollywood films. And Jonah Jones basically figured out a formula for the quartet that was basically, just a swinging kind of rhythm and just straight ahead play the melody, don't really goof around too much. And he was churning out records like every couple months. There was another record by Jonah Jones. And once he discovered that formula that was working well for his audience, like I said, he was just, the creative juices were flowing, and he was just producing record after record after record. And this happens to be one of them. It's no frills, kind of just playing the melody. There's a short solo, I believe, in there, but you know what? It was part of the pattern that worked, and I forgot. Must have been some sort of sticker here someone removed, but it's in pretty good shape. Alright, last but not least, we've been playing a lot of this gentleman. Last few episodes I at least featured one tune by this gentleman on, I'd say, the last 3 or 4. So why not one more? But this time we're going to we've been playing a lot of him playing the flute. So this time I found a piece that features him on his alto saxophone, and this features a group called the Bob Alcavar Singers. Bob Alcavar Singers, and this is Bud Shank. Okay, kind of an interesting big bullfrog sitting in a bunch of flowers and everything. There is actually a tune on here, I believe. Is there a tune called Bullfrog? No. But this is kind of an interesting record. This is from 1970, I believe, and this features a lot of cover tunes of popular tunes of the day. 1968, 1969, some 1970 stuff in here. For instance, it's actually called Let It Be. The record is called Let It Be. And of course we have John Lennon and Paul McCartney's Let It Be. Games People Play by Joe South. Something by George Harrison. Long Time Gone, Tex Ritter. Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell. Love's Been Good to Me, Jimmy Pepper. The tune that we actually played, A Famous Myth, which is from the United Artists motion picture Midnight Cowboy. Didn't We, Jim Webb. Long and Winding Road, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. And For Once in My Life, Ronald Miller tune. So again, those are all pop tunes covered in sort of a little bit more jazzy feel to it. And it's in great shape. It still has the plastic on it. There's some sort of blue magic marker or something going on there, but it's on the plastic, not on the... And same thing on the back here, some sort of ink, but it's on the plastic. So the record and the sleeve are still in really good shape. So there you go. That's the show, basically, in a gist. The gist of the show. Please go ahead and listen, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, especially the tunes that we have from the Sound of Jazz. Okay. Have a good one, everybody, and thanks for watching. And look forward for next week's episodes. Are going to be really good too. All right, bye bye.